Welcome to Indus Special. I'm Ejaz Haider. General Habibullah Ahmadzai, a former security advisor to President Ashraf Ghani, has accused high officials in the presidential palace of offering jobs to women in exchange for sexual favors. In an interview with Afghan channel Khurshid TV last Thursday, Ahmadzai said people were working systematically for promoting adultery in the presidential palace, and everyone is aware of it. Ahmadzai also said that some ministers, president's advisors, and parliament members have their hands in prostitution, claiming that some female parliamentarians were declared victors in last year's highly contested parliamentary election based on sexual affairs. The presidential palace has categorically denied the charges. At a press conference earlier this week, Haroon Chahansuri, a spokesman for President Ghani, said Mr. Habib Ahmadzai's allegations are completely false and baseless. This issue will be seriously investigated and the results will be shared with the people of Afghanistan. Mr. Ahmadzai's allegations are an insult to the women who have sacrificed for so long to reach decision-making levels. No one will be allowed to harm the honor of Afghan women. However, the issue got a fillip when Maryam Wardak, who has worked at the National Security Council for many years, told an Indian news channel that the issues Ahmadzai brought up and highlighted reflect reality. Maryam's remarks have since instigated a vilification campaign against her on the social media, even though, as some people have pointed out, the burden of proof is on Ahmadzai, who made the original accusation. Chief Executive Abdullah, chairing the Council of Ministers meeting, said the solution should not be to punish those who have conveyed the message, a less than oblique reference to the campaign against Ms. Wardak. Mr. Abdullah also said that something could have happened and that there should be an investigation into the matter to see if the claim can be verified. This is not the first time such accusations have been made. Last year, Ghani ordered an investigation into allegations that female football players were sexually abused by high-level officials in the nation's football federation, including a former provincial governor. 5 officials were suspended. Many posts have appeared on Facebook and other social media platforms by women making similar allegations and supporting what Ahmadzai has said. In the TV interview, Maryam Wardak also expressed concern that the allegations could be used to curb women's freedoms and rights. Unfortunately, and I quote from what she said, this has become a rallying call for the Taliban and Islamic jihadists. I believe that Afghan women should be concerned that the actions of very few could result in the cause of strengthening application of Sharia as well as traditional archaic customs of isolating and denying the progress of Afghan women. To discuss this issue and the poor rights record of Afghanistan with reference to women, we have with us Pashtana Durrani, who is founder and executive director of Learn Afghanistan, global youth leader and a women rights activist. We also have with us Kimberley Motley, who is an American lawyer and has actually worked in Afghanistan, and Amina Khan, who is a senior research fellow at the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. Ms. Durrani, let me begin with you. There's been, as far as discrimination against women is concerned, it's widespread in Afghanistan. And according to one UN Gender Inequality Index, Afghanistan was ranked 168th out of 189 countries. So the situation is not really great, even though post-Taliban, the idea, among other things, was to create a state and a society where women could move upwards and could get the kind of equality that they were denied when the Taliban were ruling Afghanistan. But it doesn't seem to have worked that way.
Well, starting with the claims that General Ahmadzai or Ms. Wardak has made, or their claims that they are thinking that they want to prove it, I would rather say that post-Taliban, women have worked a lot. They have gained a lot of positions. They are working in administration. They are working in international organizations. Like back in the 2000 and like a decade earlier, if you see, there were women coming from other countries working for Afghanistan. But right now, if you see, we have women activists, we have women journalists, we have women in the administration, and most importantly, we have women in the leadership positions, which has like not.
But as you know, one woman journalist was very recently killed in broad daylight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, so that is my point actually. See, there is a difference, like honor killings happen in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and including India. It's a trend over South Asia. We cannot just mix one honor killing or what we can say the honor killings trend with what is said to be in government positions or what women in leadership.
No, so we aren't really talking about honor killings per se, but what we are saying is here that someone very close to President Ghani, who was his security advisor, his bodyguard, made some very serious accusations in his television interview. And as I said, then, yeah, so this is something which I'm sure you'd agree with me requires a very serious inquiry into why these accusations were made.
See, here's the thing. Let me walk you through it. First, when you might have seen it in Pakistan too, when you are running an election campaign, you just go for it and you do have a smear campaign against your opponent or probably like the people who didn't help you run the win the elections. So with General Ahmadzai, he was running for parliament. He didn't win, and now he's making all the claims that he can just because he's supporting Atmar's team, which is internal politics, to be honest. So now, if in Afghanistan, let's be honest, women and their honor is the most important thing, and women coming out.
Hold on, Ms. Durrani. Are you saying that Ahmadzai has made these accusations because he ran for one of the parliamentary seats, he couldn't succeed, and now he's making these accusations? So essentially, are you saying that what he's saying is wrong and it's mala fide?
See, here's the thing. If he has proofs, why isn't he coming to the court? Like we are asking Ms. Wardak as an activist. I'm asking General Ahmadzai. Why is he not coming to the court? We are asking them continuously to come to the court. Me, Habiba Ashna, and many people like us, we are asking them to come to the court, prove their claims. They don't have proofs. All they have is claim. So if you don't win the election, you probably will run a smear campaign, and that's what they are doing at the moment. I wouldn't say that for Ms. Wardak, but I am saying this for General Ahmadzai. The claims that he made in that interview, it was just because he didn't win the parliament elections, and now that he is on Atmar's team, which is an opponent team, he's going against Ashraf Ghani. And the one thing that people are very sensitive about is women in Afghanistan. That is the reason now he's like, why not attack women?
Okay, let me pull in Kimberley Motley here. Kimberley, you worked in Afghanistan. What do you think? I mean, in terms of, I talked about the gender inequality index, and of course, we are not looking at Afghanistan in the sense of, let's say, Western Europe or Scandinavia, but there have been attempts to try and get women into positions of decision-making positions and to get them to work as professionals and the rest of it. But while the state has been trying to do this in a societal sort of perspective, it hasn't really happened as yet, or at least to the point where one would have wanted it to go. What's your experience, and how would you look at these allegations?
Well, basically, I just want to make the distinction that I'm an international attorney. I've been working in Afghanistan for 11 years, and many of my clients are the vulnerable women of Afghanistan whom I represent in the Afghan courts. The way that I look at the charge of the allegations that General Ahmadzai has made, they're very serious charges, and they should be investigated. And I do want to make the distinction that Marion Wardak was only talking about what General Ahmadzai's allegations. It wasn't that she was launching her own allegations. But I do think the fact that Miriam, a person, Ms. Wardak, who I personally know, and is a strong leader of women in Afghanistan, has always supported women, has been supportive of orphanages in Afghanistan. The fact that she is being so viciously attacked herself, I think sort of proves the point about how oppressed women are. And she's being attacked for the statements that General Ahmadzai made. When she came to the media and talked and made her interview, she was only speaking to mostly what he was saying. And so now she's sort of being attacked viciously, personally, and so publicly on social media. People are coming after her from a security standpoint. They're threatening her life. They are demanding that she be part of the investigation when she really has nothing to do with it. But I do think it's a demonstration about how oppressed women are. And when you have a strong woman like Ms. Wardak, sort of coming out and interviewing and giving her opinions on what another governmental official has said, and she is attacked even more so than the person who made those allegations, I think that's yet another example of how Afghanistan does not support its women. And I think it's a real shame that there are other Afghan women that are actually coming after Ms. Wardak as well, and they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that.
So why do you think, I mean, there's the Afghan Women Network, I think that's what the acronym is. And they have been on the social media, they've gone after Maryam Wardak. And there's a sense by some of the people who are supporting her that these women are generally part of the officialdom in one way or another. And they have been put up to this by the current government in order to attack Maryam. And I totally agree with you that, as I said also in my introduction, that the burden of proof is on Ahmadzai, not on Maryam Wardak. And yet, the vicious campaign has been more directed towards Maryam than towards General Ahmadzai.
Right. I mean, I will say from a personal standpoint, I think what's a real shame is, unfortunately, very often women just do not support other women. And if you're a powerful Afghan woman in Afghanistan, unfortunately, there are certain people within the Afghan women's networks that will go after you. People within that network have come after me for representing women in Afghanistan. So I know from personal experience how some of the women in that network, I don't think, are very well intentioned. And so I don't know, who's sort of pushing them to go after Ms. Wardak. I'm not going to say it's a governmental entity because I simply don't know. But I will say that I believe that them going after her is a very misguided attempt to defame her reputation in Afghanistan. And she is sort of becoming the victim of this whole smear campaign against her when she has a great reputation in Afghanistan for fighting for women's rights.
Absolutely. Amina Khan, from this side of the border, as a professional woman, how do you look at these accusations and the fact that post-Taliban, there was always this attempt to try and create a different kind of Afghanistan, and this was one of the benchmarks. Do you think this benchmark has been adequately met?
Look, to be honest with you, when we look at President Ghani's regime, I have to say that, we have seen women empowerment. We see, as was mentioned by the first speaker from Afghanistan, that, women are in important positions. Look at, for example, Ambassador Rahmani, who's, the Afghan ambassador to the US. And apart from that, there are a number of women that hold important positions. So I think due credit does go to President Ghani for this. But this matter that's come up, it's not just limited to Afghanistan. I think, Afghanistan is currently in its nascent stage. It's a nascent democracy, so one shouldn't expect too much from it, because if you look at, established democracies, they suffer from this particular issue as well. So I think for me, the important factor in all this is that at least women, whether they're speaking against each other or they're supporting each other, they are coming out. This is an important matter. It needs to be taken seriously. Hopefully the investigation will be initiated. So, then we'll see who's lying and who's not. But I think the most important or the worrying factor for me is that when, women are coming out and speaking against Ms. Wardak, I personally do not know her, but the fact that, she's taken such an important position and a stance for sure needs to be acknowledged. And I think one shouldn't really look into this matter as in just limiting it to Afghanistan. This happens throughout the world. And one should just wait and see whether the investigation, if it does take place, and if it does, what comes out of the investigation.
Okay. Pashtana Durrani, this issue needs to be investigated. The palace spokesperson, as I said in my introduction, and I actually quoted from what he said during the presser, and he said that this will be seriously investigated. So, has that process started, or is it, just one of those things that you say at the pressers and then it trails off into nothingness?
So here's the thing, when we talk about General Ahmadzai claims, because it was his claims first, and when he made it, we made sure that he's the person who is first asked for, and a legal action is taken, because it's not the first time that people talk against women when they are in leadership position just to bring down women or just to have their own gains. So a legal action has been taken against him, and he's asked to bring in proofs in the court, including Ms. Wardak. I won't say that we are attacking her or Women Network is attacking her. All we want is, if women are being attacked, if they are asked for sexual favors, and if we don't know about it, why not tell us? Why not be the whistleblower? You are the women leader. You surely have more experience than we do, or I do personally. Why not help us be the whistleblower? Because personally, I haven't witnessed it. And if you have the same, if you have proofs like General Ahmadzai has, why don't you come to the court, and why do you leave the country? So my point here is, when actions were taken, General Ahmadzai claims to have proofs. Why not bring them to the court when we asked you to? Why not, Ms. Wardak, if you have proofs, why not bring in the proofs?
So here's the thing. Yeah. Here's the thing. General Ahmadzai, as we all know, was very close to President Ghani, was a security advisor, his bodyguard, and he made an accusation. Now, as far as Maryam Wardak is concerned, she said that, well, what he has said is something that is likely to be right. And she also said that this gives a handle to the right wing and to the Taliban, who will obviously flag this as something, this entire sort of Project Enlightenment, so to speak, is something where women are being looked at, are being objectified, and are looked at as nothing more than sexual objects. So this is something that she was concerned about this, and she said it in so many words. Now, why is it and how is it that she's being attacked so viciously? Because that is very obvious through the social media vilification campaign. And why are some of the other posts that have come up on Facebook and other social media platforms where women are actually talking about the fact, and there's this one woman who's talked about the fact that she was invited to a dinner where there was liquor was being served, and she was asked, rather specifically, it's a pretty specific post, which is written in Darib, and I had not reproduced the content of it here, but these are allegations that are being made. So I think women, instead of going after Maryam Wardak, should be asking for a very serious inquiry into these charges.
See, you don't just ask for something if they are the ones that came forward with it, right? Like with the Me Too movement, right? When you come forward with it, when you are victim of sexual harassment, right? Or physical harassment or mental abuse, you should come forward, you should talk about it, and make sure that if you don't have proofs, at least you should have a witness. Or if you have witnessed it, at least recall it in that manner. The same goes for General Ahmadzai. If he knows, if there are claims made to be, if there was liquor served, if any woman was asked for any favor, why doesn't he prove that he was there and he witnessed it? This
is a post by a woman, and I'm sure that woman can be traced, because she gives her name, and she says that she also talks about the person who actually said this to her. So I think that can be very easily worked out. But let me go back to Kimberley. Kimberley, since you have worked in Afghanistan, and you've done some groundbreaking legal work there, and mostly I'm assuming that these are cases where you represent women. Give me a general sense of where the women stand, and how much more distance needs to be covered for women to actually feel confident and safe. And this, as we can all understand, is an issue which goes beyond just having a few women in positions of power or decision-making positions.
Right. Well, I do think within the 11 years that I've been there that women have made a lot of progress in Afghanistan, but obviously there's a long way to go with that progress. And I would say, especially pointing to somebody like Ms. Durrani, pointing to Miriam Wardock, who was a strategic communication advisor, seeing more women within the courts and whatnot, that these are positive women that are working within Afghanistan. However, I think what is very disappointing is to have people within the Afghan Women's Network, including Ms. Durrani, to continually attack Ms. Wardock, who is only giving her opinion to what Mr. General Ahmadzaid said. And I think there is no incentive really in their investigation if they go after Ms. Wardock for only giving her opinion about what Mr. General Ahmadzaid said. The fact that they're going after her so viciously, personally, and publicly, what incentive is there for any woman to come out to say, this is how I was sexually harassed within the government? You know, it's ridiculous. And I think the Afghan Women's Network, maybe perhaps they need to look at Ms. Wardock's interview again and understand actually what she said instead of jumping on this bandwagon to basically troll her on the internet cowardly, and support her and support the fact that there are women that will never come out, unfortunately, who do have issues within the government. You know, and I do believe that there needs to be an investigation, but this is an opportunity for the women to embrace sort of those women that are being treated poorly within the government, because this, as Ms. Wardock said, this only gives as fuel to the fire for insurgents. You know, they love this. They love when women are attacking other women. They love when the government and the people are attacking each other. This only makes them, unfortunately, stronger.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pashtana, Kimberley Motley, Amina Khan, for speaking with us on this issue. We'll take a short break and return to discuss India-Pakistan relations in the wake of Mr. Modi's election victory. Stay with us. Welcome back to Indus Special. Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party has backed a big win again, improving further on the 2014 elections, which gave the BJP a clear majority in Lok Sabha, Indian Parliament's lower house. Relations with Pakistan saw much seesaw during Modi's tenure, ending finally in near total disengagement and acts of military aggression. How would the Modi government proceed now? Does the win, which piggybacked Modi's anti-Pakistan rhetoric, mean more of the same? Or is there a possibility for constructive engagement? Prime Minister Imran Khan felicitated Modi, and the latter also responded with a thank you. Yet, unlike 2014, Modi chose not to invite the Pakistani premier to his swearing-in ceremony. The next stop would be the SCO meeting in Bishkek. Some reports suggest the two would likely meet on the sidelines. What's in store is what we shall discuss today with Rifaat Hussain, who's head of public policy department at NUST, Mr. Nishant Varma, who's an analyst based in Ahmedabad, and former Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, who joins us on the phone line. General Mustafa, starting with you, how do you look at this? Where do you think, assuming the next 3 months, where are relations likely to go?
I think they are going south, and that is where they're going to travel. Because Modi, personally, I think the way I have read whatever Indians are writing and the way it has progressed during his election and after the elections, Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party feel that their stance, anti-Pakistan stance, and the fact that they have tried to convince their people that they have forbidden Pakistan into submission, that is what has carried the day for BJP. And therefore, I don't find any reason for BJP to come off the high horse, or Modi to mellow down to an extent where he be able to talk peace with Imran Khan. They might meet, but Modi's attitude is going to be condescending mostly, and he expects Pakistan, like he was doing before this election, to submit to what India wants. And that is something where the things are going to be stuck. It's not going to change anything. In fact, it's going to be tough for the people in the region, and Pakistan has its task cut out, as far as I'm concerned.
So some analysts also suggest that now that, domestically, he has managed a very big win. So the next 5 years, he might like to, leave a legacy. In other words, this is more like perhaps going to be Vajpayee 2.0, Do you think that is a likelihood? Or you think that's not going to be a likelihood?
No, then you have to see the person also and his intellect and his vision and his capacity. I don't think so he has the capacity to change or morph into a statesman. He's basically a street fighter. He's basically has come up through Gujarat where his terrorism, his acts of terrorism or his acts of violence or is that kind of a Makuman act. That is what has carried him through. That is what he sees himself as. And for such people to morph into, let's say, a statesman or to be able to think of leaving a legacy, if there is a legacy that he probably would like to leave, is that of having done something more substantial in damaging Pakistan, not as something having improved the relationship in the region and having brought peace to the region.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, talking to us. Mr. Varma, what is your sense of where relations are likely to go?
Good question. I am not a foreign policy expert. I am a citizens expert, and whereas citizens go, I understand that citizens would love to be hand in gloves, playing together, being together, doing business together, loving each other. Political will of both the countries, I don't think that the political will desires this kind of a good relationship. Now, time and again since 1947, I have been studying and watching that relationships, we are talking about it, but we are not stepping ahead. When I say we, the clap happens with both the palms, from your side and my side. With regards,
but
Mr. Modi,
Mr.
yes,
Varma, it seems since you talked about citizens, India just went through a huge electoral exercise, which is essentially a baseline exercise for succession principle. And Mr. Modi has been returned by a thumping majority once again. In fact, as I said in my introduction, he's actually improved the numbers from 2014. So clearly, the citizens believe that he's doing something which they agree with. And if that means anti-Pakistan rhetoric, which was the hallmark of Mr. Modi's campaign, then possibly the majority of the citizens of India think that, they don't need to engage Pakistan constructively.
You see, the reason why I disagree with this narrative, Ejaz Bhai, is because one of the member of parliaments of BJP, the famous film man, Sunny Deol, does not even know about Balakot episode. So if he does not know, I think Indians at large do not know what is happening between India and Pakistan, other than what I call is propaganda being shown or told to them. So in reality, someone getting elected necessarily is not the representation of exact meanings the way we want to perceive it. So for sure, 90% of Indians or 90% of Pakistanis would not exactly know what is transpiring between India and Pakistan on the political front. But ground reality is, if I in India or you in Pakistan go to a layman, they are not against each other. So yes, because
but unfortunately they don't make policy. That's the problem, So if they made policy, then perhaps we would be having a different kind of framework in which we could talk to each other. But the common person doesn't make policy.
Yes, and this is a dilemma, because when politically we need to necessarily say, today I need to necessarily tell Ejaz Bhai sitting in Lahore that my Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a policy against Pakistan may not be the truth and reality of a perception of local laymen in India. So that's the reason I started by saying political will is absolutely different from what ground realities and people's perception is.
So what is, without prejudice to what you're saying, and I agree with you, what is your sense? Give me a sense of, like, as a citizen who has stakes in his country, in the sort of, upkeep of his society, where do you think the situation is going, in terms of like improving the ground situation for the minorities, having better relations with Pakistan and other countries in the neighborhood. What is your sense?
I don't think so. It is going anywhere. Because could it be the condition of minorities or oppressed class in India? Nothing has improved. I reiterate, nothing has improved. Relationships with our neighbors, well, wherever there is no stake, it is good. Where there are stakes, the political will has always remained to keep the spike in the electricity up so that they can rule the country. Unfortunately, this is the reason both of us, being nuclear powers, still remain a third world country. I have no shame in saying this, at least for India.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was Nishant Varma speaking with us on where relations are likely to go. Now let's get down to the real tough questions. Dr. Rifaat Hussain, sir, the usual ploy, when you don't want to invite Pakistan, then you don't use the SAARC framework. You go for BIMSTEC. That's what they've done. So, and Pakistan is not part of BIMSTEC, so you invite BIMSTEC heads of government and states to your swearing in. That means Pakistan is left out. It's an interesting ploy. But what does it say about Modi's mood going forward?
Well, it does indicate that the status quo policy or the previous policies that Modi government has been pursuing vis-a-vis Pakistan, which essentially means their efforts to isolate Pakistan, put pressure on Pakistan, and charge Pakistan with allegations of cross-border terrorism, etc., etc., and also win over the friends of Pakistan who are standing by Pakistan. So in this case, it's very interesting that contrary to the expectation in Islamabad, there was a sense of hope that following Sushma Swaraj's meeting with the foreign minister, it is the beginning of a thaw. But then we now realize that Modi's swearing-in ceremony will be performed without the presence of Pakistan, and indeed the two other countries who are part of the SAARC framework, namely Afghanistan and Maldives. So by focusing on BIMSTEC as the area of interest for the Modi government, it clearly indicates that Modi is a hardening of the posture towards Pakistan will continue. Though I should add that maybe for the first year, Modi will try to see how far this policy will further deliver it to him, and if this policy begins to backfire or has to have significant cost for India, then they may like to engage in a rethink of their approach towards Pakistan. But for the time being, at least for the first year of Modi's term, I do not see any possibility of relationship improving, even though Pakistan has been begging for dialogue right from the day PTI came to power. They have been expressing interest that they would like to return to the negotiating table, but unfortunately, India has come up with a India has failed to come up with a matching response.
So that brings me to this issue of whether Islamabad should continue to try and open spaces for negotiations or some kind of dialogue. If Delhi is not interested, how long should we, sort of continue with the old policy of trying to sort of lure them in and, get them to sit across at the table? Perhaps we should also then rethink our policy of engagement.
Well, not necessarily, Ejaz. My own view is that total disengagement from India is not possible because they are our geographical neighbor, and we live in a globalized world. So total disengagement or comprehensive disengagement as a policy option is not available to Pakistan. So if that's not available, then what is there left for Pakistan? And I think Pakistan should pursue a selective engagement policy, should engage in areas with India, for example, relating to Kashmir, relating to confidence building measures, nuclear CBMs, trade issues, in which the Indians have a relative stake, and then should pursue the dialogue accordingly. But then comprehensive engagement with India is also not possible. So between total disengagement and comprehensive engagement, Pakistan is left with very few options, and that's a policy of selective engagement. And that too would require that Indians should be able to engage with Pakistan, or they should at least express a willingness, or they should send signals to Pakistan that they would like to engage with Pakistan. And if India continues to be in an assertive, hegemonic mood that the Modi government is in right now, so then Pakistan must not be begging for dialogue, or should not be bending backwards to ask for a dialogue, and use that opportunity to turn inward its own economy. There are significant domestic issues, unlike India, where there is a problem of employment, farmers, agriculture, but all those issues have been submerged because of Modi's win. So Modi has been able to paint his victory as a referendum on the record of Modi's first government, and the record seems to be a mixed one. But in case of Pakistan, PTI is struggling to gain some space for itself, whereby it's able to put its own house in order, and especially the economic situation, which seems to be so dire and is likely to get tough in the few months ahead.
Okay, let me reformulate. I wasn't actually talking about total engagement, but the issue here is that yes, there is a dialogue framework, which now it was a comprehensive dialogue, then it was a resumed dialogue, now it's a comprehensive bilateral dialogue. It used to have baskets and now it has pillars, but call it what you will. The fact is that all those pillars or those baskets where we have issues with reference to Kashmir, with reference to nuclear risk reduction, with reference to Siachen, Sir Creek, and a number of other issues. India has simply stopped using that framework. So my question really was with reference to what kind of framework can we use in order to have that selective engagement? Because a lot of work has already been done by the Sherpas as far as those issues are concerned. But moving forward, if India is not going to invoke that dialogue framework, then obviously Pakistan cannot do it unilaterally.
Well, of course, it goes without saying that Pakistan cannot do it unilaterally. It takes two to tango. But what I'm suggesting is that of the deadlocked comprehensive dialogue, which has all these 8 or 9 baskets of issues, Pakistan should be prepared to pick on any one of them, and provided India expresses an interest to engage with Pakistan. Right now, India is in a mode to boycott any kind of negotiations, any kind of even talk of a resumption of a dialogue, let alone the dialogue itself. They are not in a mood to do this. So given that, Pakistan should prepare itself for the continuation of the status quo, but at the same time should send signals which are, for example, Indians are interested in getting access to the Central Asia using Afghanistan trade or transit agreement, and that's something that Pakistan can engage with India, provided there is a sufficient guarantee that India will not use that only to its own advantage. Pakistan cannot really, or the other option for Pakistan is to look for international engagement, and there can be an international pressure whereby, for example, countries like China, who is a friend of Pakistan, and countries like even United States and European Union, if they are pressing for a dialogue, so then Pakistan should express its willingness. But right now, I do not see any hope for the resumption of a full-fledged dialogue, and even within that dialogue framework, any engagement on a single item that's of interest to India and Pakistan.
Where Pakistan can take the initiative and put pressure on India. A very good example of that was the initiative that Pakistan took with reference to Kartarpur Sahib. But here's the thing, because Modi is a hawk, his hawkishness feeds the hawks in Pakistan, and therefore the essential thing for the Pakistani policymakers is to actually find space where hawkish India can be brought under pressure, and that is generally a function of smart strategy, not frothing at the mouth. This is all for today. We shall see you tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.